Today's lesson is day 3 of overview of purpose, design, and studies in the unit we're doing called statistical studies. It's unit 3 in advanced quantitative reasoning. We've been working on this book for a while. We're halfway through. We're almost there, and we only got 3 units left. So the bell ringer today on today's lesson is, if a participant in a research study for migraines was given a pill with inactive ingredients but reported improvement in their migraine pain, what is this phenomenon called? I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I was told as a kid it was called a sugar pill, but a placebo is a pill or some kind of inactive ingredient medicine that they're given to a patient that believes psychologically they have something going on and they don't. And they just give it to them to make them feel better because of this particular phenomenon. If they're doing a research study and you have part of the group that's getting some kind of medicine that has active ingredients, that's the treatment group. They're getting a treatment. And the other group is getting some kind of pill or something that has no active ingredients or just inactive ingredients. And that pill is called a placebo. And when those people that get in that control group, that's what it's called, are given that placebo and they report improvement, that's called the placebo effect. That's when they psychologically believe they're improving simply because they believe they're being treated for it by a new medicine. And that's what that is, okay? So I think it's in there. Let's see. Yeah, psychological or a placebo effect. That's right. The placebo effect is actually a psychological effect. So it's in the mind. All right, so good things today. Let's see. Only thing good that I found out was I've been coming home finding the door open in my house, and I didn't know why. And I come to find out the wind is strong enough to open up my door because it kind of rattles at the door. So it's a good thing that no one's coming into my house and stealing stuff. So that's always a good thing. It's not a good thing to come home and be disturbed with your door wide open. That kind of freaks you out a little bit. 2 days in a row it happened. So hopefully it won't be windy and doesn't come open. I'm going to buy something today to fix it. So, all right. So let's talk about Mrs. Johnson and Mr. McDonald's exam situations. Remember, they both had those ways to try to figure out whether music could influence the way people do on their exams. So suppose Mrs. Johnson's results overwhelmingly favor fill-in-the-blank exams. And that's because what happens is, in her example, she gave people in certain periods of a class, they flipped a coin. That's right. They flipped a coin. And if they got heads, they got a multiple choice. And if they got tails, they got fill in the blank. And let's say that the results in hers overwhelmingly favor fill in the blank exams, and they do better. And Mr. McDonald's results, and Mr. McDonald's had the survey at the end of his test, strongly favor multiple choice. Are these results in conflict with each other? And what could be the cause of the difference? And you got to think about this for a second. Remember, student participants may prefer multiple choice format without realizing they would do better on a fill-in-the-blank test. Mr. McDonald is recording preferences. You understand what I'm saying? So the preferences are people's opinions of what they like and don't like. So that may not actually give what will give the best results. And Mrs. Johnson just measured performance. She flipped a coin and gave them one or the other kind of test. And so really her results are a little more based on fact and not on opinion. So both teachers may teach differently, making their test different, as well as the types of students that are in their class. So keep that in mind. All right. Suppose Mrs. Johnson takes the results of her research to the school board and asks the board to require that all teachers in the district give fill-in-the-blank exams. If you are a school board member, or if a school board member asks you what should be done, what recommendations should you or would you make? And this takes a little bit of thought, and then I'm going to give you guys a little time to think about this. Remember that in both research studies, both Mrs. Johnson and, let me remember his name, Mr. McDonald's research, Mrs. Johnson based hers on the facts of the results. And Mr. McDonald based his just on the preferences of the opinions of the students that answered those survey questions. Now, here's the deal, though. Teachers do not represent the students in the district, okay? High school is different from elementary school. Social studies is different from mathematics. AP classes are different from regular classes. We can't make a blanket rule over all of the different courses because it just wouldn't work. One teacher may have two different fill in the blank tests that are very different. The board should study the research further by conducting additional experimental studies throughout the district. And it may be really good to do fill in the blank in like history classes, but in mathematics, I mean, you need to show the work anyway, most of the time, but you could do a multiple choice on the math test and it would work out just perfect. Okay, in the following slides, there are several summaries of actual studies. Read each study and be prepared to answer these questions about each study. So the studies are coming up and I'm going to go through the questions. Is the study observational or experimental? And explain why. Now, remember the litmus test here, an experimental study requires a treatment. An observational study does not require a treatment. And a treatment is something given to the participants. All right, who or what are the participants or experimental units? That's simple. What are we actually testing? Is it people? Is it plants? Is it dogs? Is it cats? Is it the space-time continuum? Yeah, that's kind of funny. I just brought that up. Anyway, if experimental, what was a treatment? You know, if it is experimental, there's a treatment involved. We'd have to define what that is. That way we can prove that it is an experimental study. If a treatment exists, how was it assigned? Now, that's kind of important to understand. How do we determine who gets the treatment and who does not? If it is an experimental study, was there a control group and or a placebo? In other words, was there a group of people or participants that were not given the treatment? We do that simply so we can compare the results of both. If observational, what was being observed and why? Are we looking for preferences? Are we looking for results? Are we looking at the difference between certain things that happen? Are there any statements that appear to be opinions? That's important. Remember that when we do a survey and we're asking people to answer questions, if the question is based on emotion, generally speaking, you're not going to get a really good assessment of what you need to find out. Are there any stated or implied limitations to the study? That's a little more difficult. You have to look at each study and deep dive into it and figure out exactly what is implied and what is stated. Okay, it has to be understood. Coming back to that last question, whether a statement appears to be opinions, you're going to have to really pick and choose those to figure it out. All right, so tobacco in middle school and high school students. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention conducted the National Youth Tobacco Survey in 2004 to measure current use of tobacco products and selected indicators related to tobacco use, including youth exposure to tobacco-related media and access to cigarettes. The survey was distributed to 267 U.S. public and private schools. 14,034 middle school students and 13,738 high school students completed the survey. Participation was voluntary and anonymous. School parental permission procedures were followed. Some results included A, 11.7% of middle school students and 28% of high school students reported current use of tobacco product. B, 77.9% of middle school students and 86.5% of high school students reported seeing actors using tobacco on television or in movies. 70.6% of current cigarette smokers in middle school and 63.9% in high school said they were not asked to show proof of age when they purchased or attempted to purchase cigarettes from a store. These results indicate very little change from the results of a 2002 survey. The lack of substantial decreases in the use of tobacco products among students indicate the need to increase retail price of tobacco products, implement smoking prevention media campaigns, and decrease minors' access. The findings in this report are subject to limitations. First, these data apply only to youths who attended middle school or high school. Among 16 and 17-year-olds in the United States, approximately 5% were not enrolled in a high school program and had not completed high school in 2000. Second, the questionnaire was offered only in English. Thus, comprehension might have been limited for students with English as a second language. So let's look at these different questions. Is it experimental or observational? Now, the key here is the word survey. Whenever you conduct a survey, that survey is no longer experimental because you're not giving them a treatment. You're asking for someone's opinion. Therefore, it becomes an observational study. So the participants, the middle school and high school students that actually did the survey were the participants in this particular statistical study. We can bypass the next question because it asks for experimental stuff. The treatment question we can pass. Control group, placebo, we can pass. If observational, what was being observed and why? We're observing students' opinions. That's exactly what they want to put on. Are there any statements that appear to be opinions? Well, the statements at the end are not opinions, they are facts. Are there any stated or implied limitations of the study? Those are the statements on the bottom. Those are the limitations. Now, I want to point out something here. Can anybody tell me what might make this survey not accurate? First of all, look at who they're talking about. High school and middle school students. Look at what they're talking about. Cigarette use. What makes you think that people doing the survey are going to be honest? I was afraid they might be implicated with breaking the law. It's going to be a little more difficult to tell the truth. Now, they're being told, hey, totally anonymous and you'll never get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was asked if I smoked when I was 13, I probably would have told them no. And I did smoke when I was 13, so there you go. All right. Here's another study. Scientists in Turkey undertook a study of people with epilepsy. The research included analyzing scalp hair samples from 22 participants with epilepsy and 23 participants without epilepsy, checking for differences in levels of copper, iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium. The researchers speculate that such differences could indicate metabolic differences or difference that may contribute to epilepsy. Results indicate that the epileptic group had significantly lower levels of copper and iron compared to the non-epileptic group. So, is it observational or experimental? Now, this one's kind of tricky. We did collect samples of things, but did we give any of the participants a treatment? Remember, that treatment dictates whether it's an experimental or an observational study. And since all we're doing is collecting samples from them, we didn't give them any treatment. We didn't give them anything. We're observing whatever is in the content of their hair follicles. That's it. Or scalp samples, scalp hair samples. So, I mean, you look at it from that perspective, you realize immediately it's not an experimental study. It's an observational study. So we'll go down to the next observational question. What was being observed and why? The scalp hair of 22 participants. 22 participants with epilepsy and 23 without it. Are there any statements that appear to be opinions? The results indicate that the epileptic group had significantly lower levels. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. The opinion is that the researchers speculate such differences can indicate metabolic differences that may contribute to epilepsy. Now, they're looking to observe this and find out whether it can be true. That's why they point out that it is a speculation. A speculation is something that they believe may be true, okay? So remember, the word opinion means something that a person believes may be true. So right now, that's just an opinion, which is why they're conducting the study. Are there any stated or implied limitations to the study? Well, as long as all of the participants are around the same area of Turkey, I think it's fair to say that they may have been eating the same things. If they're eating the same things, then it's possible that it's inherited, and those levels of copper and iron, if they're different, is simply an inherited problem. Maybe we can't, or that particular people can't infuse the copper and iron into their body. On the other hand, if they're spread out over the whole country of Turkey, it may be their diet. And their diet might have something to do with the fact that they have low levels of copper and iron. And that's beside the point. We're merely trying to answer a question. All right. Now, I know that's not a lot of information, and there's a lot more stuff on that. We can talk about it forever, but I'm going to launch you with this. It's the end of this lesson. Every time a person is prescribed medicine for epilepsy, a series of research cycles is started because each medicine reacts differently with each new patient. So doctors are forced to guess or use a process of elimination until they prescribe the most effective medicine at the proper dosage. Now, why would I bring this up in a launch? I bring this up in a launch because my oldest son is epileptic. And I've been through this process. There's a reason they call doctors, or they say that doctors are practicing medicine. And despite the fact that they've been to school for 12 years and have all kinds of knowledge under their belt, there is no cure for some diseases. And epilepsy is one of them. And they really don't have a good blanket medicine to treat every person. Every person's epilepsy is different. And because of that, they go through a series of different types of medicines to see if it works. And they actually have to check on them. And they do EKGs and check their brain waves and see if there's any improvement. And unfortunately, my son had to go through several of these from the age of 5 to the age of about 15. Now, unfortunately for me, he's been off maintenance meds for epilepsy since he was, for at least 5 years now. So, but anyway, there's a Google Classroom assignment in there. Be sure to go in there and get that done. In the meantime, please take the time to be blessed and be blessed. Be a blessing. Yeah, that's it. Be blessed and be a blessing. All right.